We've been talking a whole lot lately, ever since, I guess, the Charlottetown group got together, the caucus, the Liberal caucus there about a week ago, and talk about Justin Trudeau's future as leader of the federal party, starting to intensify. A new poll, the Nanos research poll, provides what I would call more worrying data for this party and for Justin Trudeau, I think, as leader. Nick Nanos, chair of Nanos Research, is on the line. Mr. Nanos, appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
Great to join you and all your listeners.
So let's talk about this. Typically, traditionally, 18 to 29s, they belong to the federal Liberal Party and certainly to Justin Trudeau. What are we seeing here? Why? What's changed and how?
Well, if we go back to 2015, it was enthusiasm among many Canadians that were under 35 years of age that were ready for change, like the progressive message, had all that Sunny Ways stuff that they kind of bought into. Fast forward now, and it looks like from the numbers that younger people are drifting away from the Liberals. Many of them are going to the Conservatives, probably because of economic reasons, because they're just trying to pay for the groceries and are very frustrated. And others are drifting to the New Democrats because they're frustrated, probably because the Liberals, although they talk a good talk on a lot of these progressive politics, they might not be moving as fast as some young progressive voters want.
I don't know what's more surprising there, the fact that they're moving away or the fact that they're moving to, of all people, the Conservatives.
Well, I think many are moving to the Conservatives because for young people, they were crushed during the pandemic. They're on the front line. They have more debt than their parents had at their age. They're struggling to pay for groceries. You know, they can't pay for the rent. Housing is unaffordable. Like, does this sound biblical? Like, it's just bad, and it's a tough situation for many young people. And I think for some of them, they're just looking at the Liberals and can't see things getting any better, and they're willing to try something new because I'm sure they're thinking maybe they don't like Pierre Poilievre perhaps as much as some other politicians, but they have nothing to lose if you can't pay for the rent by opting for someone else.
Yeah, they're just looking for hope, right? They're looking for anything to make them feel better about their current situation. How does this pan out province to province?
Oh, well, the Liberals, it's like bad news for the Liberals almost everywhere, except for Quebec. That's like the best province for them right now, and the Prairies. And can I tell you something? If the Prairies is one of the better places for the Liberals, it just shows the dire straits that they're in, because that just means they're not losing the few seats that they do have in the Prairie provinces. But right now, the Liberals could lose upwards of 15 seats in Ontario. They could lose a number of seats in Atlantic Canada, which is another big Liberal bastion, and British Columbia could be a significant setback with both the Conservatives and the NDP picking up seats at the expense of the Trudeau Liberals.
So this is last week's stories, and I mean, I'm not sure it was your poll or not, suggesting that for the first time, the Conservatives now are actually in potentially majority territory here. Am I right?
That was one of my friendly pollsters. We have the Conservatives winning and in a minority situation.
Okay.
So, but are they teetering? It's kind of like, hey, you remember the movie Titanic? Maybe this is a bad, you're on the front bow and it's like, hey, the Conservatives are teetering on perhaps a big win, but they're not, in our tracking at least, they're in minority win territory.
I'm also wondering, Nick, if provincial and federal affinities are aligning. Like in BC, we know NDP is more popular provincially. Are we starting to see that on a federal level as well?
I'm not sure as much because, we'll look at Quebec as a case in point. I'm not sure if people would equate Legault with Trudeau, right?
No.
Because they're two very different cats with different kind of visions for prosperity and stuff like that. So I think what this really boils down to is one, time for change, catching up with the Liberals, and every government has a best before date, and then the Liberals looking like a tired government. Like they got to put something new in the window. They've got to explain to Canadians why they deserve another mandate. One of the reasons why Stephen Harper lost wasn't just because he had been in power for a long time. One of the reasons why he lost is because during the election that he was defeated in, he failed to say what he needed to do for Canadians and what was left to do in a Harper mandate. He just tried to tear down his opponents. I think the Trudeau Liberals have to watch out that they don't do the same thing. Smearing Pierre Poilievre is not enough to win. They've got to explain to Canadians why the Liberals deserve to be left in power.
That's interesting, and yet for Pierre Poilievre, I would say smearing Trudeau and the Liberals might be enough to win.
Yep. How's that?
Yeah.
And actually, the other thing that Pierre Poilievre has to do is to zip it, because whenever he doesn't talk a lot, his numbers go up. So he has to let governments defeat themselves. So he basically, what Pierre Poilievre has to do is attack the Liberals, say that it's time for a change, and basically say, the Conservatives are not Liberals, like we're different. And then to let Canadians make a decision.
It's to me, it seems anyway, it's like the louder you say it, the longer you say it, the more people will believe it. And Pierre Poilievre has been doing it now for quite some time, long before there was even talk of a possible election. And we're not even in an election cycle now. And I'm guessing when I see polls like yours, Nick, that message is starting to get through. As I said, you say it long enough and loud enough, people buy in.
One of the interesting trend lines that we've seen in the last few years is that the proportion of Canadians that are satisfied with Canada as a country has been declining every year for the last 3 years. And the lowest satisfaction score, I think it's like a 5.6 out of 10, is among younger Canadians. That's like kids coming home from school and giving their parents a D for the job that they're doing for creating Canada as a nation. And so right now what Pierre Poilievre is doing is he's tapping into feelings of declinism that are out there, that things need to change and that we're not going in the right direction. And it's a tough one to fight for the Liberals, especially since they've been in power since 2015.
Okay, I have a question again about gender lines here too, Nick, because I think we tend to think women would be more inclined to vote for the Trudeau Liberals. That we're not seeing that anymore.
Well, the enthusiasm isn't there that we've seen before. The winning formula for the Liberals and the Conservatives are mirror images of themselves. For the Liberals, it's to do really well among women and be competitive among men, and then for the Conservatives, it's to do well among men and be competitive among women. And right now, the Liberal advantage among women is not as strong as it has been in the past, and Pierre Poilievre is just becoming a little more competitive, and he's already doing very well among male voters.
So, Nick, just as a final question, with respect to, yes, the Conservatives are doing well, where's the breakdown from what you've seen in terms of individuals? In other words, Pierre Poilievre versus Justin Trudeau. What are we seeing there?
Well, it's pretty clear. The good news for both of them is that they're not competing against perfection, because if they were, neither of them would be elected or selected as Prime Minister. We have a dead heat on the preferred Prime Minister tracking between them, and it speaks to Canadians seeing two imperfect choices.
Isn't that fascinating, huh? Nick Nanos from Nanos Research. Nick, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.